All love fancy looking cars. So in this tutorial I'll be creating this convertible car, and I used no reference image, but for your case you can use a reference image, and I hope you will enjoy creating yours. Cuboid, I'll do some modifications on it by scaling up along the Y, X axis. Also scale down along the Z axis just a little bit to get a good shape for a cuboid. Hit tab for edit mode and add a loop cut along the y-axis which divides the cuboid into two halves. Select that face, hit X1 to delete the vertices, default them, leaving the other half. Add a mirror modifier and check that box on clipping, that one. Add some loop cuts along the x-axis, add some more along the y-axis and also some on the z-axis to get more room, more vertices to work with. um, that is a good number of them. So going to side view, you can hit 1 for vertex select and select some vertices, some random one. Select that vertex and grab upwards up to that point. Select and grab it towards the right, and also for the bottom one do the same. Grab it downwards, select and grab it towards the left to get a good shape for a semicircle for the wheel ramps. Hit number 3 for face select and select those faces. Hold on shift and select those on 2. Extrude them inwards along the x-axis up to that point for the wheel ramps. Go to wireframe mode and extrude those vertices upwards for the windshield up to that point. For the bonnet, I'll drag and select those vertices, grab them downwards up to that point to get a good shape for the bonnet. Drag and select up to that point, get a good shape for the bonnet by dragging and grabbing up to that point. And for the trunk, I'll do the same. Select the vertices, some of them, and grab them up to that point. Get a flare at the back. Select and grab them upwards to get something like a bump. For this one, I'll extrude them downwards. To get a more defined shape for the bonnet, select those vertices and grab them upwards. Select those two and also grab them upwards. And for the headlights, I'll do the same. Get a good shape for the bonnet, actually a good shape. And for the seats, I'll drag those, I'll extrude those but faces upwards. Do the same for those one, extrude them along that blue axis, and also select those on the top and extrude them upwards along the z axis. Also you can grab them backwards along the y axis. Select those for the front seats and extrude them upwards up to that point. Also scale down along the y axis just a little bit to get a more defined shape for those seats. Select those and extrude them on the z axis by hitting E and Z. Extrude them again along the y axis backwards up to that point. Select those two faces and scale down just a little bit up to that point, and also extrude them upwards. For these two faces, I'll hit Ctrl X to dissolve those faces and get one face. Play around with the vertices for the bonnet to get a more defined shape for that bonnet. Select that face, hit E and right click and scale down a little bit. Otherwise you can insert that face by hitting I. Scale down a little bit up to that point and extrude them inwards up to that point. For those one, I'll do the same. Extrude and right click and scale down up to that point. and also extrude those three of them inwards up to that point. Select those two faces, hit E for extrude and right click, scale down a little bit and extrude them inwards. Do some modifications on that bonnet by hitting 1 for vertex select those vertices and grab them outwards along the y-axis towards the right corner. Up to that point, get a more defined shape. For the trunk, I'll do the same. Grab those vertices and grab them upwards. Select and grab, select those by dragging, select and grab them upwards to get the bumpy boot, that is. Um, do the same for those three vertices, them towards the left along the y-axis. You can never go wrong with those vertices since we are using no image reference. So select those faces, hit A and right click and scale down a little bit, scale down up to that point, through those two faces inwards. I don't want them to look like they are popping from nowhere, so give them a defined shape. For the wheels, I'll add a circle still in edit mode so that it can be mirrored along the other side of the wheels. Select those vertices and scale down so that they can fit along that wheel ramp and grab those vertices downwards to fit perfectly on that wheel ramp. It looks quite positioned well. Hit E for extrude along the x-axis towards me, and hit Alt and select to select all of those vertices. Hit E and right click, scale down up to that point, hit E, hit Alt and select, grab them towards me, and so for those vertices too, grab them towards that. Extrude and right click, scale down a little bit along that axis, hit E, right click and scale down one more time. Also extrude, right click and hit Ctrl X to dissolve those vertices to get one face. Select some of these faces randomly, hit E and right click, scale down up to that size and also grab them inwards along the x-axis up to that point. Select that center face and extrude towards the screen, that is. For the steering wheel, I'll add a circle as an object by hitting Shift A. Let the number of vertices be 20 and for the radius I'll go for a 0.05 meters. Position those inwards, extrude those vertices up to that point. This one will be our steering wheel. Scale those vertices up to that point and also scale up again up to that point. Hit Alt and select one of those vertices. Extrude, right click and Ctrl X to dissolve those faces. Select some of those faces and delete them by hitting X3. Select the remaining faces and extrude them upwards. Select the center face too and extrude them upwards this time along that x-axis. Get a solid shape for the steering wheel. And for the dashboard, I'll do the same. You can never go wrong with the vertices, as I said earlier. So grab those vertices and get a good shape for the dashboard. Select that face, extrude, right click and scale down, extrude again and for this time I'll scale up along the z-axis. This one will be our review mirror. Go to wireframe mode to select those faces behind that mirror and rotate it along the z-axis so that they can point the driver. Go to solid view, rotate a bit, go to film icon and check that box on ambient occlusion. And now it's time to add our materials. So for the whole car I'll give it a blue color. No, and for the steering wheel I'll add a new material, give it a dark red hue. For those wheels, for the wheels I'll give them a black shade, that is a black color up to that point, and assign those materials. Make them more rough as because those are rubber. For this one I'll select those faces for the rim and add a new material, assign that material to 8. For the color I'll give them a silver color, that is because they are metallic. Make them more metallic and more shiny by decreasing the roughness value down. And for the seats I'll select all those faces which connects the seats and assign a new material. Go to that plus icon and a new material for the seats. Rename from material 4 to seats so as not to get confused. You can assign that material and give them that hue color. For windshield I'll select those 4 faces and I want them to be one face, so I'll hit Ctrl X to dissolve those faces. Also in edge select mode, extrude those edges upwards and select that center face only. Select the face for the review mirror also and assign a new material. For the base color I'll give it a black hue and scroll down to the settings and change from opaque to alpha blend to make it more transparent. Drop the alpha value down to that point, and also to make it something like a glass material, again to make it more reflective. Select some of the faces for the review mirror and assign the material for the wheels. That material, that black shade, assign that material to them. Select those faces under the wheels so as to get some uniformity of color on that face. And for these faces I'll give them the material for the wheels, that black material. Assign that material to them. So I'll select the whole of that wheel, duplicate it by hitting Shift D and grab those wheels along the y-axis to the front wheels. Up to that point, position a bit. Select the 2 faces for the tail lights, that face, hold on Shift and select that face too. Assign a new material and change from principled to emission. I want them to emit some light. Give them a red hue, and for the strength I'll change it from 1 to 6. Give it a strength of 6. And with that you can assign that material. You can see it's red. Do the same, select those faces, hit the plus icon button and assign a new material. For this one I'll also change it from principled to emission. Give it a strength of 6. Is a yellow, can't go wrong for the headlights. Select those faces near the bonnet and assign the material for the wheels, that is the black material. Give them more color, that is that one. And up to that point our car looks more refinished. What's remaining is to give our car a floor, and for this I'll add a mesh, a plane, and give give it a size of 20, which looks quite large enough for the car, and position it along the z-axis downwards so as to fit near the wheels up to that point. And for this I'll add a new material, add a black floor, so you can make it more shiny by decreasing the roughness value down a little bit to get more reflections on that floor. Rotate a bit, and up to that point you can see our car looks quite appetizing, I can say. You can switch off the overlays to get a clear view of how your car looks like. Rotate it a bit on that wheel. You can see the floor is reflecting quite well. And that's all guys for this tutorial. You can beautify a car by going to that film icon and enable bloom. You can see the lights are on, and rotate it a bit, get a clear view. Also you can do some changes for the color. You can play around with that, with those specular for the colors. You can go from pink, switching off the overlays to get a clear view. Rotate that arrow for the color and give them different shades of color to the one which looks good for your eyes. But for mine I went for a blue shade. A white one looks quite good, it's not bad, but I ended up with this blue hue.